Welcome to the Tip Channel. That is perfection. We're getting ready to start a bathroom project down in a basement garage area. Now, as you can see, the contractor, whenever they built the house, did the mechanical rough ends for the commode area. So the first thing that we need to do is to locate where our wall is going to be. Now, the commode is going to set in this direction. And first of all, we need to check the center line of the commode. So basically what that is coming off the wall. We want the center of the commode. And you can see I've marked a mark there indicating that. Now, we need 12 inches to the finished wall for the commode. In our case, we're going to be using 1/2 inch HardieBacker, 1/4 inch ceramic towel, and roughly about 1/8 of an inch of thin set. That's the adhesive to put the towel up. So what we're looking at is approximately 12 7/8 inches. Now I've rounded that off to 13. So this is the start of my wall. Our next thing we need to do is to figure out square so that we can actually put our wall square to this wall. Now I've seen a lot of people take a 2-foot contractor square, lay it down, and pull a square off that. Now, if this is off even a 32nd of an inch, you can actually be off a lot by the time you get down to here. What we're going to do instead is to pull a 3-4-5. Now what a 3-4-5 is that we would measure down the wall 4 foot, measure out into the floor 3 feet, and across that diagonal should be 5 foot. Okay, now that 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot can be any increment of that. Let's just say, for instance, that you're putting on a 30-foot addition. You can measure along the existing house 40 feet, measure out 30 feet, and across that diagonal should be 50 feet. Now, in our case, our bathroom is going to be about 6 feet. So what I've done is I've doubled the dimensions. In other words, the 3-4-5, I'm doing 6, 8, 10. So I've measured from my mark where my wall is at here, going down 8 feet. I've measured out into the floor 6 feet, and across my diagonal I have 10 feet. Now where these two marks intersect each other, that's our square coming off this wall. Once we get that marked and we set our second wall, we can then go corner to corner, corner to corner to double check ourselves. But this is a fairly accurate way of getting the wall square. So basically the 6-foot mark is right here. We went down the back wall 8 feet, and then we came across that 8 diagonal, and our diagonal mark is right here. So where these two lines intersect, that's basically where our square is coming off the wall. Now we have all of our walls laid out, and we can see that the mechanical vent for the commode was placed a little too far out. I need to be back in here with it. So in order to get the framing started, we need to relocate the vent for the commode. Naturally, you can use a 4-foot level to level your walls. It's very nice to use a laser, and this one's made by DeWalt, and we're going to transfer the floor lines up to the ceiling. And you can see that that does a nice accurate job of giving us a line to work off of. Alright, we are about ready to start our framing. Now first of all, we're going against concrete, so we're using a piece of womanized lumber. Naturally, there can be some dampness underneath of the concrete, which would come up to the wood. So we want to stop that right at the source. So we've used a womanized 2x4. Now there's two ways we can do this. We could take and build the wall and then stand it up. Or we can put the bottom and top plate on and then toenail our upright studs. I've chosen to go that way for a couple of different reasons. Number one is this exterior wall is out of level. It's leaning about 1 inch out in this direction. The ceiling, we have a lot of obstacles, ductworks, lights, what have you, that we have to work around. So by putting in individual studs, we'll be able to adjust for the unevenness of the concrete the unevenness of the wall, and the obstacles that we have to work around the ceiling area. Now, to attach the womanized board to the floor, we're going to be using a product made by a company called Tapcon. And basically what a Tapcon is that it's a blue screw, and it's made to attach to concrete. So we'll be using a hammer drill, drilling down through, and then attaching the Tapcons through the womanized lumber into the 2x4 of the floor. So we're ready to get started. The customer has decided to use a plywood beadboard on the exterior of the bathroom. Naturally, in this garage environment, that will be a lot more durable than drywall or what have you. Naturally, they can bump against it and it won't hurt anything. So we've laid out our studs so that the exterior of the product, the exterior of the wall is going to work with the beadboard product. The interior, I'm going to be using drywall up above, and I'll run that horizontal, so it doesn't matter about my studs. Down below, I'm going to use a HardieBacker for ceramic tile. Now, HardieBacker comes 3 foot by 5 foot. Now, does that make any sense? No. It absolutely does not work with any dimensions in regards to stud. I will need to cut it accordingly in order to land on studs. So everything has been marked on the bottom plate, and then I have transferred that to our top plate so that everything is very nice and level. Now, I used a laser to do that. You naturally could use a straight 2x4 and a level to do the same thing. The laser is just a little more accurate. Now we're going to show you how to toenail. Now, typically whenever I'm toenailing a board in, I go to each side of the stud and toenail. Now in this case, I'm not going to be able to get to the other side. So I'm going to have to come in from the edge of the 2x4 instead of the side. So we'll shoot a couple nails. Now the only bad thing about this is that the nail won't go completely into the board. So we'll need to just tap it in a little bit to make it flush with the board. The next stud, we're going to do a typical toenail. What that means is we're going to come in from the side. I'm going to be up about 1.5 inches on the board. The nails that I'm using are about 3 inches, so that'll grab the bottom plate by about 1 inch or so. Now, why is it called toenailing? I really don't know. I'm going to assume our ancestors came up with that term just so that people remember to keep their toes out of the way. Don't know. But basically, the first nail that I put in will tend to bump the board just a little bit. So what I normally do is I compensate for that. In other words, I go about 1/8 of an inch off of the line, figuring that my nail is probably going to push it about 1/8. And we're right back on the line. This is just a little header that we're building for above a door. But I wanted to stop and explain to you that if you do decide to build your wall and stand it up, just a couple of things that I wanted to note for you. The first one is basically lay them down on the floor, line them all up. Now, do not put your hand right up here next to that. If that nail skips out, it's going to get you. What you want to do is hold back about 4 or 5 inches. Now, if you are building a wall to stand up, if you make it the same height as what the ceiling is, what you're going to find is you're going to have to use a sledgehammer in order to get that into place. And what I'm talking about is that, as you can see, this wall, that's just 21 inches. But if I look at it on an angle, which is what you would be looking at if you were standing a wall up, the dimension's 21 1/4. So basically it grows 1/4 of an inch. Now, a simple solution to that is make your wall 1/4 of an inch shy. You can stand it up, put a shim up to the existing ceiling, and you don't have to beat it in with a sledgehammer. Just a little tip. Hope that helps. We're on day 2 of our bathroom remodel project. Yesterday we were able to move the vent location over into the wall, and we got a good bit of the studding put up for the walls. I did purposely leave out these 2 studs at the end because we've got to run a drain through here for a urinal, and naturally it's a lot easier to not have to fight with these two last studs drilling through those in order to get my pipe into place. Yesterday we hit 92 degrees here in Pennsylvania, so I didn't get quite as much done as what I thought I would, but again, hey, I'm old. So anyways, today we're going to try to frame in the ceiling. I'm going to drop down to approximately about 8 foot. I do have a ductwork running through here I need to go underneath of, so I might end up maybe 94 inches or so. We're going to try to get the rest of the framing done, and then we're going to start our mechanical rough ends. Okay, we're about ready to start our ceiling, and as you can see, what I've done is I've hung my laser, and with my laser I'm going to be perfectly level all the way around. Could I do this with a 4-foot level? Sure, but naturally I'm going to be off somewhere. With the laser, everything's going to be perfectly level all the way around. I naturally, because of the concrete floor, I can't measure from the floor up to get a ceiling line. It's going to be off in places, so the laser definitely makes the most sense. We finished up our framing this morning, and the humidity in Pennsylvania today is about 70%. And no, this isn't one of those programs that you watch on TV where the host shows up, he works for 5 minutes, and then the actual crew comes in to do the job. This is real world. What you see is what you get. Now that I finished framing, and while it was fresh in my mind, I wanted to share a few things with you. Naturally, a lot of the lumber yards offer delivery today. In getting delivery, what you're getting is the very top of the pile in the lumber yard. It is all the boards that somebody's already picked through. So we ordered premium studs, and this is what they are considering a premium stud. It still has bark on it. Any old timer will tell you they don't make them like they used to, and that is true. Now, if you take the time to go to the lumber yard and actually pick out the lumber yourself, what you're actually going to look for is you're going to take the board and sight down the board. Now you're looking for a couple different things. You want to see how bad the crown is. Now the crown, basically, when you look at a board, you're going to see that one side is probably going to have a little bit of a hump in it. That's called a crown. And then naturally the other side is going to have a dip because of the crown. So you want to make sure that crown's not too bad. And then you also want to make sure that as you're sighting down the board, it's not crooked this way. So you're looking for this, and you're looking for this. Now, don't pick the stuff on top of the pile. Go deep, because everything on top of the pile has already been picked over. The problem with today's lumber, let's talk a little bit about moisture content. Now, if you're going to do a project using lumber straight from the lumber yard, not the lumber yard, I'm sorry, the sawmill, what you're going to find is that that lumber is soaking wet. It's not been dried. So what's going to happen is that if you put two boards up and butt them together, say on a ceiling or a wall, what have you, eventually when that material dries out, you're going to end up with about a 1/4 inch gap between the two. Also, the boards are going to want to warp, they're going to want to twist, what have you, because they're soaking wet, they're still drying. After about a year, if you air dry hardwood lumbers and what have you, it'll be acceptable for actually use. Now, the problem with framing lumber is that you're dried to anywhere between 15 to 19%. Why they don't take it farther, I don't know. Hardwoods for cabinet building will be anywhere from about 7 to 9% moisture content. So what happens is that the lumber is still dry, is still a little wet. So if you bring it home and you set it out in the sun and what have you, yeah, it's going to start to warp, twist. Any good framer will tell you when they're framing a house, they stand the walls up, and at the end of the next day, they'll see the two before starting to twist and turn and warp and what have you. It's just a natural thing that happens because the lumber is only dried from 15 to 19%. Anyways, I hope that helps with picking out your lumber. If you do have your lumber delivered, my suggestion, order another 8, 10 boards and then send back the worst of the worst to them. But as you're framing your walls, figure out what side is your crown. In other words, you're looking for that hump. and mark that with a C. As you go to frame your wall, keep all your C's in the same direction. So in other words, if that crown is 1/4 of an inch and you have them all turned the same way, your wall is going to run fairly straight. If you don't, and you do one crown this way, and then you have another crown going this way, you could be off as much as 1/4, 3/8 of an inch. Not real important unless you like doing a kitchen. Naturally, you want that wall to be just as straight as possible. So mark it with a C, crown up, keep all your crowns the same on the wall, and you won't end up with those weird dips in it. We're getting ready to start our mechanical rough ends, and I've started with the exhaust fan for the powder room. Now this is going to be a powder room, it's not going to have a shower, so you will need to check your local codes in regards to whether or not you're required to put in an exhaust fan. If you have a shower or a tub shower, you will definitely need to have an exhaust fan in that bathroom. Some powder rooms, again depending upon the municipality, will allow you not to do a exhaust fan if you have a window in the bathroom. We do not have a window in the bathroom. We don't have a shower, but we're still going to put an exhaust fan in. We want to get rid of any odors that might be collected in the bathroom. Today we're going to be running through 4-inch metal pipe. Exhaust fan, depending on the size of your pipe. With us, we're doing 4-inch, so we're good for about 30 feet. Now, what you want to keep in mind is that that's 30 feet of straight pipe. If you need to do an elbow, each elbow is going to reduce that by 5 feet. Now, in our case, we do need to make a transition. We're coming over, we need to step up into the floor joist and then go to an exterior wall. So what I'm going to do, however, in the transition is that you can see that one elbow I have at 90 degrees, the other one I have at 45. What I'm trying to do is to soften that flow so we're not actually a full 2 90-degree elbows. Now, as we put our pipes together, I will refer to this as the mel end. We want the mel end to always point to the outside. The reason for that is that naturally the air will continue to flow. If we were to turn in the opposite direction, the air would get caught on this little bit of flange. So we want to streamline this thing as much as possible. Now we'll be putting the pipe together with what is called a zip screw. Now a zip screw, this is a very tiny screw, and you can see it has a point on the end, so it will start its own hole. You don't need to pre-drill. You also see some zip screws which has a cutter in on the end of it, if you will. So basically we have about 20 feet that we're going to run to the exterior. So with a couple elbows, we're right at that edge where we're okay to do what we're doing. Now, in the old days, a lot of old timers just ran vents up into the attic. That's not a good thing. If you have a shower in there, what you're doing is you're taking and putting all that steam up into the attic, and as you know, moisture creates mold. So you don't want to do that. A step that they did afterwards is they would run up into the attic and then run out to an overhang eave and do it there. But again, basically going out into an eave, what's happening is the steam is coming down and then coming right back up into the vents for the roof. So not a good scenario. So your two possible scenarios with your vent for your bath: straight out through an exterior wall or up through the roof. Now I need to cut this piece of pipe, and what I've done is I take a marker and mark the dimension that I wanted all the way around the pipe, so I've got something nice to follow. Now for cutting the pipe, you can use 10 snips, and that was my go-to for years. No problem at all using a pair of 10 snips. If you're going to do a lot of duct work, or if you want to make your job a little easier, a pair of metal shears really does the trick. Naturally, you don't have to buy these. You can go to your local rental place and rent these as well. But they do a great job in regards to cutting. Okay. Okay, now you can see naturally I needed a male end on the one end. And now I've got a piece of pipe that doesn't have a male end on it. So there is a solution for that. This tool right here will actually take and make these crimps on this piece of pipe. And it's just as simple as putting it in, along around the pipe. And you can see that that is creating the male end. Whenever you cut your pipe, this flange right here will squeeze together a little bit. So you're going to take a flat screwdriver and open that back up. Then basically to put your pipe together, all you're really looking at doing is taking this end and slipping it down under this one. There you go. We've got our ductwork ran outside of the bathroom, and eventually we'll be running that to the exterior wall. We'll be going through the exterior wall with a flapper vent like this, and as the air pushes it open, the flappers come open and allow it to escape. Naturally keeps any birds or insects from getting inside of the house. Now, the one thing that I did fail to mention is that the exhaust fan has a little flapper in it. The little flapper basically is to stop any air that might be coming back into the room. If you get a bad storm or what have you, and it lifts these little flappers up, instead of the cold air coming in and into the bathroom, that little flapper is closed. When you turn on the exhaust fan, that flapper goes up. So whenever you connect the pipe to the exhaust fan, you do not want to use zip screws because naturally that will interfere with your flappers. That area, just put some duct tape on. We're ready to start our plumbing rough in. Now, first two rules of plumbing. Number one, poop won't run uphill. Second rule, wash your hands before lunch. Just kidding. But seriously though, basically for plumbing, what you're looking for is a 1/4 inch drop for every foot of run. In a 4-foot level, basically that would be an inch. So what we have is our plumbing rough end is going to come out at 17.5 inches off the floor for the urinal, which I think every home should have a urinal, in my opinion. So I've marked the 17.5, and then I leveled across to here. Now we're talking about 2.5 feet from this stud to this stud. So what I did then was drop down 5/8 of an inch, and that is going to keep my 1/4 inch drop on plumbing. Now that's the minimum that you're looking for. Now a lot of codes call for a maximum of 40% drop. Now a 40% drop, basically if you run the calculation, ends up 0.48, or just round it up to 1/2 inch. Now what's the reason for the maximum? On a sewer drain, your problem is that you need water to get rid of solids. So if your drop is too dynamic, what happens is the water runs away from the solids. So your solids end up plugging up your line. So rule of thumb, 1/4 inch per foot on drop, maximum 1/2 inch per foot on drop. We're getting ready to run our water lines to the bathroom. And as you can see, the customer's home does have 3/4 inch PEX, which is a good thing. It's a bad thing. I know that I grew up in a coke oven patch that had galvanized pipes, had no water pressure whatsoever because of naturally rust building up on the inside of the pipe. So when I built my home, I said, I'm going to go all 3/4 inch copper through the entire house, which I did. It's good and it's bad. Yes, somebody can flush the toilet without getting scalded or what have you in the shower. However, if you get 30-35 feet away from the hot water tank and you want to take a shower, you can turn the shower on, come out, get undressed, go pick out the clothes that you're going to put on after the shower, and you may even have time to go brush your teeth before you actually get hot water at the shower. So it is one of the downsizes. So they do have 3/4 inch PEX. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple of valves just in case there's ever an issue with the bathroom. They'll be able to isolate the bathroom and not affect the rest of the house. But we are going to step down to 1/2 inch. The reason I want to step down to 1/2 inch PEX is because naturally, again, that amount of time to get hot water to this powder room. So we'll have plenty of pressure. They've got 3/4 PEX we're tying into. We're only about 15 feet away from the bathroom. Pressure shouldn't be an issue, but we won't have to wait forever for hot water. I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about PEX. Now don't get me wrong, I used to love to sweat copper. With the exception if you're trying to sweat something that has water inside of it. It makes a nightmare how to try to get a good bead on a fitting. With the invention of PEX, very seriously you could teach a 5-year-old to be able to do this. Very, very simple. Now, I'm going to use, in our part of the country, it may be named something different in your area. In our area of the country, it's called a shark bite. Now, I don't have to use a shark bite. I could actually start right out with a crimp. But I'm going to use a shark bite valve. Now, I do prefer to use ball valves. Now, the ball valves, the big advantage of it, it's going to last a lot longer than the old style of shutoffs, which had a rubber seal down in the bottom. In a 10-15 year period, that rubber seal would go and it would no longer shut off the water. So I do like the ball valves. And as I mentioned, this is a shark. Now, even if you have copper running through your house, you'll be able to start from the copper with a shark bite. All these things do is simply push right on. Now, I know that this is going to go up inside this about 1 inch. So what I normally do is I take a marker and I put like a 1-inch mark on. And all it simply tells me is that whenever I go to push this in, I'm going to know that yes, I pushed it in far enough where it's not going to be an issue. So basically, as I mentioned, they just push right in. And as you can see, my mark just disappeared and I'm totally inside of there. Now, if for any reason that you made a mistake or what have you, oh boy, what do I do now? They do make a tool, and basically this tool slips right over top of the pipe, and it will push right down on this little plastic right here and allow this to release from the pipe. So it is forgivable, if you will. For the rest of our installation, we're going to be running PEX with crimp fittings. Now, there's 2 different types of crimp fittings. One is a steel band that goes around the pipe, and they make a tool that has a jaw that opens up, goes around, and crimps it. That particular one is a metal crimp. The ones I will be using today are a stainless crimp. I choose to use those because, as you know, stainless is not as likely to rust as what steel will. But how these work, very, very simply, the PEX, they make tools to cut the PEX, and you can see, just like cutting butter. You take your crimp fitting and put it on your pipe. You put your brass fitting. Now, they do make these in plastic. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of plastic. I use a brass fitting. This slips right inside of the pipe. And then you take your crimping tool and put it on the stainless steel crimp and crimp it. Then put your next piece on with a crimp. And I just made a 90-degree elbow just that quick. Now you can see what the tool did is that it actually crimped that piece, tightening it all the way around there. Now I once did a beauty salon. This beauty salon had 3 bathrooms, 2 showers. It had 6 shampoo sinks and 2 pedicure tubs. I had over 1,000 crimps on that job. I did not have 1 leak. Now, another thing that's amazing about this, and I don't understand why it doesn't, but after you've got it crimped, you can actually take and turn that pipe. Can you pick up on that moving? It can move and it doesn't leak. Pretty amazing. We've completed our tie-in to the existing plumbing in the house. Now, whenever you get ready to do this, naturally shut the water off. Go to the lowest point in the house. Hopefully there is a sink in the basement. Turn it on, and then go up to the kitchen and turn on the kitchen sink. The kitchen sink will allow air into the system, and that naturally will allow the water to drain down into the lowest sink. Whenever you get ready to make your cut, naturally have a bucket handy. Make your cut, clear out anything underneath that might get damaged if it gets wet, and then go ahead and put your fittings together. But as you can see, we started out with 3/4 inch PEX. We come up to the 3/4 inch PEX ball valves. We reduced to the 1/2 inch, and what's really nice is, as you can see with the PEX, when you need to go around obstacles, naturally it bends. Very easy to work with in an existing basement environment. We completed our plumbing rough-in today, and fortunately the homeowner had thought about a bathroom in the basement whenever they were building the home, and had drains put in the floor for the bathroom. So we were fortunate to have a commode drain. Now, if you'd still like to do a basement bath but you don't have a commode drain, there is what's called an upflush. Now, what an upflush does is, right in behind of the commode is a mechanism that actually takes and grinds up the solid and shoots it up through a 1-inch diameter pipe. You simply run that up the wall and then tie it into an existing drain that you have in the ceiling right above you. I did watch a program the other night, and this was a cabin next to a lake, which had naturally a lot of ordinances in regards to septics and what have you next to the lake. They chose to use what was called an incinerator toilet. So after you do your business, you hit a button and it burns your poo up. No, I'm not kidding you, seriously. What does it smell like when you're burning poo? I don't know. They didn't go into that, but evidently there is that. So basically, in regards to our commode, you want to leave a minimum of about 30 inches for the commode. Now in our case, we have about 36, so very, very generous in the space for the commode. The supply line for the commode, you want the center line of the commode, come over 6 inches from the center line, and then come up 7 inches for your rough end. Now, keep in mind, if you're using a large wood base in your bathroom project, it might be a 6-inch high base, so you may want to go a little bit higher. But standard 6 inches over, 7 inches up. We also completed the urinal. We've got the drain in for it. I'm not 100% positive about the height of the water line, so I've just left this open. Fortunately, we're going to be open on the back side, so we can address it later. And we went ahead and ran our vents. Again, the homeowner was fortunate that at the time the house was built, he has a vent that goes up through the roof, so we're able to tie into that, which is a good thing. Now, if you're only putting a sink down here, they make a little mechanism that's called an air vent. And what the air vent does is that it has a little flapper inside of it. As you need some air into the system, that flapper will pull down, and then whenever it no longer needs air, it pops back up so that there's no odor from the sewer. If you aren't able to do a vent into an existing run that you have down in the basement, you can pop out through an exterior wall and then go up so far. Not that attractive. And you want to keep in mind, if you do that, you want to put that in a location where the sewer gases are not going to be an issue, because naturally you are going to get sewer gas through the vent. So try to choose a nice location for that. Now, in the perfect world, would have been nice to build the bathroom out of 2x6s. Naturally, as we're running 2-inch pipe up through and what have you, not a whole lot of meat left in a 2x4. It does work. The fortunate part is that I'm going to be finishing this bathroom, so I'll be very careful where I'm nailing and screwing so that I don't run into any plumbing, like I said. But a 2x6 wall is nice. We're after pandemic, everything's went through the roof, so we're trying to watch our cost factors wherever possible. We also completed the vanity rough in. Now we're going to have a 3-foot vanity in here. So basically our trap, we have set it 18 inches off the floor. The scenario is that in the old days, vanity cabinets were made 30 inches high. But now we are a much taller generation than our ancestors. So everybody's going to kitchen height for bathroom vanities, which is 34.5. So we've set the drain at 18 to 20, which is sort of typical for a kitchen cabinet. If you were using a shorter vanity, you may want to make this a little bit lower. But right now we're about 18 inches off of the floor. Supply lines, I normally used to go a little bit higher because everything had the short supply lines on them. Nowadays, the nicer faucets come with 30-inch long supply lines, so that's really not too much of an issue. We got to start on our electrical rough-in today. And basically, there's not a whole lot of electricity that we have in here. What we're going to have is we're going to have a fan switch. We're going to have a light switch for the fan, and then we're going to have a light above the vanity. What I like doing when I'm doing my electrical work is I pull my wires down, I go ahead and mark them at that time to where they're going. Then I will take and skin them. Now normally what I do is 6 inches. Keeping in mind that the boxes are normally about 3, so that leaves you about 3 inches of wire out in front of the box to actually connect your devices. You can see we have a lot of wires coming down here. So a little tip is, if you staple your first wire into place and then take and use zip ties the rest of the way up. That way you don't have to try to nail all 5 of these on this stud and worry about drywall screws and what have you going through. Now, here's one thing that if you are going to do your wiring, I ask you to do. Think about the next guy. I can't tell you how many times over the years that I've went to work in electrical box, and it almost seems as though the electrician took and hooked up the switch or outlet and then pulled the excess wire out. I mean, you literally can't even get the switch or outlet out of the box. Think about the next guy. Basically, if you notice my wiring, what I do is I make a little loop out before I go into the box. What that does in any event that a future electrician needs a little bit of wire inside of there, he can tug and he's got another 2-3 inches to work with if need be. Now, a couple of other items. This is a tool made by Klein, and I strongly suggest it. Now, this tool has an area right here which strips 12-2 and 14-2. So when you clamp down, it'll take that outer skin off of the wire without damaging the wires on the inside. Right below that is 12 and 14 wire strippers. So as you're running your wire, you can go ahead and strip your ends. Again, a nice feature. Now, as an electrician, you have 2 screw sides, well, actually 3, but 2 mainly. One is a 632, and a 632 you're going to find in outlet boxes. And then you also have an 832, and an 832 you typically will find in like some ceiling boxes. So what they've done is that they also have the 632 and 832 where you can take and screw a screw in and then cut it off. So if you need your screw a little shorter, that will do that. The end of the unit is nice for turning your wires to crimp around a outlet. So a very nice tool, very handy to work with. Also, a new invention that they just came out with, I'm not sure if this is the right terminology or not, but they're quickies. Now, what a quickie is these come in 2, 4, and 6 units. And you can see this one's a 4. There's 4 places to plug into it. So you strip your wire about 5/8 of an inch, and you simply plug them into this. So a little nicer in comparison to the old wire nuts. Now some people will say, oh no, wire nuts are definitely the way to go. I used them for years and years and years. Nothing wrong with wire nuts. This is a lot quicker. I can tell you that I wired an entire 3-bedroom house with a full basement with quickies and never had a callback. That's been about 10 years ago. So again, these come in 2, 4, and then there's also a 6-banger. And so it comes very handy, keeps your boxes very neat. Now, as I mentioned, I go ahead and mark my wires. As I'm putting them in the box, I go ahead and mark inside of the box what they are. And I go ahead and make up my wires while it's fresh in my mind. So at this point, I'm ready to put my switches in once I get everything done. Now, another tip. Make sure that you tuck all those wires back in about a good inch, because if you're going to use a rotozip to do your drywall work, you don't want to nick those wires. So tuck them in nicely. That concludes phase 1 of our basement bath project. Naturally, we'll be adding more phases to this as we continue the project. If you like the video, please like and subscribe.